Giancarlo Stanton and the Miami Marlins travel to New York to face the Mets.
Rip right field towards the corner. Gone!
The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio. ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
You know, years ago, I used to always talk about this thing. It's called my "it's been established" rule. Like, it's been established, I don't like sci-fi movies. You do, I don't. I'm not going to try and convince you not to go to Harry Potter. Just don't try to convince me to go to Harry Potter. I don't like sci-fi movies. I don't like cruises. Oh, Colin, but this cruise, I don't like cruises. I'll never go on a cruise. I don't like cruises. And you do, I think it's awesome. Okay, I'm not a big country western fan. A lot of people love country western. I was in Nashville this weekend. I bet 90% of the people there love country western. Keith Urban's okay, but I'm never going to love it. It's been established. Rush Limbaugh's conservative, often incendiary. He's not going to change. Don't like it? Don't tune it in. Fox News is conservative. MSNBC is far left. It's been established. That is their business practice. So I'm not going to try to convince you what to think. I'm just going to tell you on a regular basis what I think. I'm not a James Harden guy. I'm never going to build my franchise around him. And when he drops 37, I'm not going to rush to Twitter to give him credit. I'm not going to do that with Melo or John Wall either. That doesn't mean every time they screw up, I'm going to discredit them. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. But there are certain players I like. The reason I like Jay-Z and not Kanye, because Jay-Z is business. Kanye's business, but he's too silly. John Wall's too silly. James Warden's a little too silly. Nick Young's a little too silly for me. My dad was serious. I got his DNA. I'm kind of serious. Doesn't mean I can't joke and laugh. Harden is never going to be the guy I build my franchise around. It's been established. He's average defensively, can be pouty and silly, diva qualities, very, very ball-centric. And I don't think sometimes in basketball parlance he's the smartest player. But doesn't mean he's a dumb guy. Okay, but I was never a Dominique, build my franchise around Dominique guy. I was a Larry Bird guy. There's glue guys in the league like Tristan Thompson I think are incredibly valuable. You can have James Harden. So, again, I think sometimes people are looking for me to like what they like. I never thought Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady and Carmelo were built for titles. I think they're spectacular. I don't think James Harden is built for titles. He can be spectacular. So I think some of you are like, what do you think now? I think James Harden can be, at times, a dominant offensive player who I'll never build my franchise around. I feel the same for Dwight Howard. It's been established. So Ray McDonald, big story this weekend, right? It's Tuesday today, but Monday kind of felt like the weekend too. And he's a guy that's been arrested, domestic violence, got in trouble. And the NFL, the way they deal with that, they'll fine you and stuff. Like 7 years ago, the NFL implemented a deterrent to harboring what they call problem players. Like 7 years ago, the NFL did this. And they kind of instituted this convoluted system of fines, suspensions, and, well, it didn't really work. And I'll tell you something. This is kind of how I believe in life. You can fix problems in society, but do you have the stomach for it? I mean, you can fix problems. Do you have the stomach? I mostly have the stomach for it. Like in college sports, there's cheating. Nobody's got the stomach to fix the problem. They get rid of the player, so there's another one waiting to play. They decide to penalize the coach or the school, so the coach will just go get another gig. The school often doesn't know what's going on. If you want to stop boosters handing people hundies, make it a felony for a booster to help a college kid. That'll stop it. That'll stop it. Okay, a lot of people don't believe in the death penalty, right? And the death penalty critics argue that bad guys, right before in a moment of rage they kill, don't sit there and consider, the electric chair is a lousy way to go. So people think that it's not really a deterrent. Somebody else can argue about that on another network. That's what the critics of the death penalty argue. It's not a deterrent. But there are deterrents. There are deterrents. You want to know a deterrent? Ray McDonald would never get a second chance if you took away draft picks. Okay? That would be a deterrent. Because teams now are making so much money, the way they look at fines, it's just part of doing business. It's like picking stocks. Hey, you're going to have some bad ones. It's like doing a radio show. You're going to have some bad segments. You're not going to lose any sleep over it. If you docked me pay if I had a bad segment, well, that'd be a real deterrent. If you dock pay on Wall Street, that could be a real deterrent. But if you're only going to fine teams for allowing Ray McDonald, multiple domestic violence guy, to go to a team, well, that's not a deterrent. And so one of my biggest problems with medicine, are you treating the system? What we're doing in medicine, really, it's just what we're basically doing. We're just treating the symptom. That's all we're doing. There's a lot of money in that. There's a lot of money in sick people. But we're just kind of treating the symptoms. Or do you want to do it right and truly eliminate the cause? So what do you want to do, NFL? You want to just treat the symptom? It's a fine, a little suspension. Or do you want to eliminate the cause? Not allow these players in the league. Domestic violence, once you're done. Are you comfortable with that? Now, it should be noted, in a league where about 70% of the players are black, they were arrested nearly 10 times as often as white players. Some say that's profiling. Others say, according to statistics, there's a disproportionate rate of poverty and single-parent backgrounds in the black culture. I'm reading that from a study. Are you comfortable talking about those things? Oh, you're not. So let's let Ray McDonald and this thing start. Keep going. Are you comfortable talking about that stuff? Because people aren't comfortable being uncomfortable. Because if we now say, let's get really harsh on arrests, I got the numbers here. Are you comfortable? I'm going to read the last 20 guys arrested. Rodney, Antoine, Ahmad, DeQuell, LaTroy. Are we comfortable denying minorities jobs in America? A lot of people aren't. This is a real issue. Even now, ooh, Colin, don't talk about it. See, this is what we have in society. We just treat the symptoms. We have no interest eliminating the cause. We have no interest taking hard-line stances. We don't. We're not interested in medicine, in athletics, in sports. But this is going to be an issue. If we decide today, one and done, we are disproportionately going to affect, oftentimes, I'm looking at the numbers here, African-American players. Are we going to be comfortable with that? Because you better be ready to tackle that issue of denying minorities in America jobs. That is a real issue. It will be met with great opposition. It will be incredibly uncomfortable. I guess for my business, it'll end up being a lot of good dramatic radio segments, but that's the world we live in now. If college athletics is not ready to make it a felony to pay college athletes, then why should I be outraged by these stories? They're not going away. To me, I would have zero tolerance on domestic violence. Zero. None. Once done, out, overdone. But I'm seeing this stuff, and it is happening over and over, and nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to get uncomfortable. Nobody's willing to sit down and discuss it. I got the list of players here. Are you ready to get uncomfortable? Because that's how problems are solved in America. They're not solved by just treating the symptoms. Here's another pill. Thanks for the money. They're solved by making brutally difficult, unpopular, awkward changes. And I just don't think as a society we are ready to make those decisions. So we continue to have problems. I mean, I am all for once out domestic violence. Once out, done. I am all for 3 draft picks out if you bring somebody on. Are you? Is the league, our GMs, our teams. These discussions, by the way, are fascinating. They're important. But blogs yell, race baiting. No, race discussing. It's really important. And if we can't be grown-ups and discuss them, then I'm tired of the whining about this stuff. You're going to allow this stuff, this Ray McDonald stuff? You're going to keep allowing it? It's appalling. It's grotesque. It's disgusting. If you want a grown-up conversation, I'm ready to have it. Most aren't.
Want more of the Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Ray McDonald, and it's an interesting story. I'm reading. McDonald was arrested twice last year with the 49ers, once in a domestic violence-related charge last summer, and in December he was accused of sexual assault. San Francisco stuck by him until the second arrest, then released him, citing a pattern of poor decision-making. To be absolutely clear, he was not charged in either case. But, it's like anything else. If a guy gets charged in 2 or 3 domestic violence, you have a right to just say, especially in the NFL, the way the contracts work, see ya. Now, a lot of people are like, I understand this. Outside of quarterback, nobody's worth more than 1.5 points in the NFL. Why risk taking creeps? Why? Well, a lot of creeps can play, and once they screw up, you get them at a discount. And the NFL's a violent league. Some of the players who have been great historically have violence issues. So, to me, unless you put a rule in, you lose draft picks, teams are going to take chances. But let's look and review the reason why people like Ray McDonald work in this league, as far as continually getting jobs, habitually, chronically getting work. Creeps can play often. You get them on the cheap. You can, in the NFL, you can cut them instantly and they get in trouble again, and the only hit you take is a couple of days of bad PR from ESPN and Fox. And fans mostly don't care because Greg Hardy will get standing ovations if he gets 14 sacks this year. So the reason, there's a confluence of events. Why? Why? It's because there's an understanding in this league, players like boxing, MMA, NFL. There is an innate understanding that some of the players who can really play have violent tendencies, certainly on the field. Some often they can't control them. Secondly, if you don't take a second chance, others will. And third, if they do it again, the NFL contracts allow you to get rid of them, and all you get's bad PR for a day until somebody else screws up 4 days later. So that's why it's happening. Now, it should be noted that NFL players, let's not go crazy here. They get arrested fewer times than you do. There were 713 arrests last year. That's 2.53% of players. That's lower than the national average for men in that age range. So as much as we, go around and criticize NFL players, they are getting arrested far less than 19 to 26-year-old players in society. Let's go to Kevin. You're in the Herd on ESPN Radio. Kevin, go ahead.
How you doing, Colin? I'm African-American, 44 years old, and in response to the question about having a serious race conversation, before people freak out, of course white men get arrested for domestic violence. But the reason this is so prevalent in the African-American society is because there are so few men in the homes. These kids are growing up without a lot of choices. And as you point out on your show, a lot of times people without choices lean towards athletics. Malcolm Gladwell talks about this as well. And I think you put all those things together, you have these kids, these black kids, being 18, 19, and 20, not knowing how to treat women or growing up around systemic violence. And on top of that, this hurts the women because when black women grow up in fatherless homes, they don't have a good idea how a man is supposed to treat them. The biggest asset in mine and my sister's life is that my father was there. And these problems are real. And if people want to act like it's race baiting, read something. Look at the statistics. It's a real problem. And it needs to be, it needs to be dealt with from the beginning rather than just punishing somebody once they're in the workforce. Because once these guys are 20, 22 years old, it's almost too far gone, Colin.
No, Kevin, we've talked about this, Kevin. I appreciate you coming on the show and talking about having a grown-up discussion. I have often taken real hits because as a white guy, who am I to talk about it? But I have a platform, and I prepare 3 hours a day, so I have black bosses. I talk about this off air, on the air. I talk about it all the time. You need to have these discussions. Yes, there is profiling in America, and no reasonable person denies there is real profiling in America on the streets. But there is also an issue, if we want to be grown-ups and talk about this, if you look at, let me give an example, and Kevin, thanks for calling. I thought about this years ago. I remember watching, when hip-hop first came out, And again, I'm 50 now, so it wasn't necessarily my thing, but I watched trends in pop culture. And when hip-hop first came out, it was almost as a rule. Now, it's much different now, but as a rule, it was Glocks, pit bulls, and girls in bikinis at a pool. Like, that was every women were, therefore, objects. They were just objects. And it was glorified by violence against cops. Women were just seen as ornaments at a pool. Glocks. And it was like, that was the message. And you know what? If you even questioned it, you were racist. Is that really a great message for any culture? And it was sold, it was advertised, it was thought of as appealing. Nobody went up and said, this isn't great. This is incredibly misogynistic, narrow, unfortunate, and it's just not stuff we should be, for anybody, advertise. I wouldn't let my kid watch that crap. But if dad's not at home, who controls it? So these are discussions that are really valuable. You'll find when I discuss this, overwhelmingly, African-American dads call. They want to talk about it. It is the often left-leaning media who's petrified of it, placates, and won't discuss it. These are real issues. Are you comfortable? Are you comfortable if you intensify suspensions in the NFL? Are you comfortable realizing that the current rate, African-American players arrested 10 times more than white players? Are you comfortable with it? If not, I don't want to hear about it, because that'll be the second part of this story. And by the way, love that call, love the discussion. We should never be afraid of it. It's incredibly healthy. I wish every show talked about stuff like this. Most aren't willing to. And you don't have to be right on all of it. Just discuss it.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Two NBA topics today. First, I'm not a James Harden guy, never a Vince Carter guy, never a Tracy McGrady guy, not necessarily a John Wall guy. Sometimes they're silly, they're too ball-centric. But I'm not going to go out and give Harden credit when he drops 37. He's going to drop 37 another 150 times in his career. There's a certain self-awareness he lacks. There's a little Allen Iverson quality where I don't think he's ever going to play near that backcourt with somebody and they're going to be totally happy. So that's my first takeaway. I'm not a James Harden guy, okay? As an NBA guy, and by the way, it's not that I'm not acknowledging they're great. I am acknowledging they're great, Tim Legler joining us. But there's just certain guys I look at and I think, I'm not going to build my franchise around. I'm not clogging up my money. I'm a Durant guy over a Westbrook guy. I am a Jimmy Butler guy over a Derrick Rose guy. Kawhi Leonard, if I had to choose, over John Wall. What is your takeaway on what I'm saying?
Well, it sounds to me like what you're saying is you want guys that do a little bit of everything, right? And guys that are willing to sacrifice sometimes to win. And for James Harden, I think he's kind of in that category. I don't think you can't win with them because he's been on pretty successful teams in his career. You have to have certain type of players around him in order to go all the way.
That's right.
And that's what it comes down to.
And I don't think he elevates those type of guys.
And I think if he gave you a little bit more of a commitment defensively, like it really was busting it, always guarded his position. If that was the guy he was supposed to guard, it's an elite scorer instead of maybe putting him on a small forward that's not quite the threat that the two guard is. So he'll go guard that guy.
Yeah. Or
if they're playing a team with a point guard that doesn't shoot much, he'll guard that guy.
That's not who he is, though.
Right, exactly. So I get your point. You can definitely win a lot of games with him, but to go all the way,
Dominique won a lot.
You have to have a certain type of team built around him. Look at the team that Iverson took to the finals. They had a bunch of guys that didn't want to shoot. They wanted to set screens, defend, and go get rebounds and give it back to him to let him shoot again, and it worked beautifully for Allen Iverson, and he went all the way to the finals. The second best offensive player was Aaron McKee that year. So you have to have certain type of blue-collar, nuts-and-bolts mentality around guys like that.
Listen, I grew up where almost all the great players, Akeem, Michael, Bird, LeBron, Kobe, all of them gave you a great. Now, I never thought Magic was a great defender. He was an awkward body. For all the advantages offensively, there were some disadvantages defensively. He was too big to guard the small points defensively. But I felt like there was a commitment on the defensive end that I don't always feel with Harden. And that's it. Great play. By the way, there's a lot of players in the NFL that I can like. Same in baseball. I just don't necessarily want Adam Dunn in my lineup. I get the home runs, but he didn't hit the ball enough. To touch on your Magic point. While he was not a great on-the-ball defender against the quicker point guards, because he's 6'9", for God's sakes, 250 pounds, he was a phenomenal communicator. He was engaged and locked in defensively to the game plan, and he was the quarterback of that team defensively. Look at a guy like Harden, it's almost like that end of the floor is really kind of doesn't matter. Because I'm going to go get my 30. I'm going to get 7-8 assists because I'm a great ball handler, very good passer. And I'll always make up for whatever's not going on.
Carmelo thinks like this.
And Carmelo thinks like that a lot, too. I agree with that. So you don't even have to necessarily be that physically gifted to defend in this league. As long as you're doing something, communication, your quarterback and the team, you're making sure everybody's on their assignments, you can still be a very effective team defensive player, which Magic was. So there's a lot of relevance to what you're saying.
Tim Legler joining us, the Herd on ESPN Radio. When I look at, I talked to 2 NBA sources this weekend that don't work here, and they said with Kevin Love, there is a real feeling, even amongst LeBron and others, they don't know what he's going to do. And the Lakers, obviously, he's a Southern California kid, also lived in Portland, so he may go to the Blazers, although LaMarcus Aldridge leaving, he just replaced him. I don't think they're a title team. But I was saying to this source, I said, if Kevin Love left LeBron, and they're going to dominate the East, if Kyrie and Love come back, you're in the finals for the next 5 years.
Yes.
The East is awful. This Atlanta team, which is not even competitive, beat Washington, okay, and they're losing Pierce. It's over. If you leave, what you're telling me, Tim, is I'm about me, not about winning titles. Because you're not going to get 5 finals anywhere else. So Kevin Love, would he not be signifying to the league, I am what you thought I was, a stat guy, not a team guy by leaving?
I think there's a lot of truth in it, and I think he's in a situation right now where he's going to play meaningful games in April, May, and June for the next 5 years, however long he wants to stay in Cleveland, because he's playing with the guy that is going to drive this thing, and he's playing with not only the best player in the league, that player is also very unselfish. He includes other guys.
LeBron.
He doesn't have a problem with Kyrie having quarters where LeBron doesn't touch the ball. He's okay with it. He makes role players impact players because of his passing ability. Kevin Love's role is dramatically different than it was in Minnesota. That can't be an easy thing if you view yourself as an elite player in this league. So that's been a difficult adjustment for him. End of the day, he is going to have more memorable shots as the third option in Cleveland than he will as the number 1 option in L.A. for the next 5 years.
Chris Bosh was not a topic on our show for 5 years. He was a weekly, daily topic in May and June for 4 years.
You're 100% right.
What would be the point of going? Now, nothing against the Lakers, because they'll go after LaMarcus Aldridge.
Now, I will say this. If what Jeff Van Gundy said on the air last night is an indication of what Cleveland's thinking, which was he basically said on the air, if Tristan Thompson and Kevin Love both re-sign, Tristan Thompson should be the starter next year.
Well, that's not going to happen.
And if Kevin Love has an inkling of that, he's not going to stay. Because now you're talking about going from, okay, I have to be treated with a certain level of respect. Even if my shot attempts come down, I get it. I'll sacrifice some of that to win.
I got to be a starter.
It's part of why we're here, but come on. You're not going to relegate me now to a backup status.
I understand that.
And I do understand that. So I don't think that would play out, and that's not the kind of thing you can surprise him with after he signs. That has to be worked out and discussed. So if there's any inkling of that, he's not going to stay. But, look, you want to have moments that matter when your career's over. He's going to have a lot of moments that matter if he stays in Cleveland and he stays with this group of guys. But there's so much goes into it. Does he connect with everybody? Does he have friendships with guys on the team?
How about that?
Is he comfortable in the locker room?
No, the 2 sources I talked to who have good relationships around LeBron, one of the things they talk about is they don't dislike Kevin Love. Right. He's just kind of his own dude.
Right. He's a good guy. He just might be a little bit more quiet, kind of do his own thing, and doesn't blend in. It was interesting that picture that surfaced earlier this year when they were on the airplane, and then LeBron put it out there, and me and my crew, or whatever he said, something to that effect.
I saw that.
With I think every guy that was in the rotation for that team except for Love.
You were in the picture.
I mean, even Mozgov was in the back, leaning in, trying to get in that shot, and no Kevin Love. Now, And who knows the circumstances of that picture. Maybe he was in the restroom. Who knows what was going on at the time. But it was kind of telling, I thought.
By the way,
it was also when Kevin Love, around that time when he said that Russell Westbrook was the MVP of the league. So that's interesting stuff. It really is. There's more to it than just, a comment made off the cuff. There's something behind it.
They go to Atlanta. He doesn't show up. There's something behind that. So I like Kevin Love, but you get to a point in the NBA, you're forced to pay max money to guys I don't want to pay max money to.
You know what? Take a year less. Sign for 4 years and try to win a couple of rings, and you'll still have time if you want to at the end of that to go somewhere else, and you'll still be young enough to be a star on another team if you want to go that route.
Kevin Love leaves
and average
LeBron.
20-plus again.
What he's saying, though, is I'm about me, not about titles.
Well, yeah, that's the situation he's in. He went there to win. They're winning. They might win a ring. Now, I know he's not part of it because he's out for the postseason.
But they're winning without him, which proves they'll win with him.
And they're going to continue to win because their core is young for the most part. So they're going to win a lot of games the next 4 or 5 years. Does he want to be a part of that and have moments we're talking about for 3 months in the spring and summer when it matters?
You're in the Herd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
I was in Nashville this weekend, and I had a great weekend. Wife, stepson. I went to this restaurant called the Catbird Seat, and it was the most unique food experience of my life. I've been very fortunate through the years. I've traveled around the country, been to 49 states, lived in 7 of them, about to live in my 8th, and hint, hint. And I've had a lot of good food, often paid for by the companies I work with, business dinners. I've never had a experience like the one in Nashville I had this weekend, Catbird Seat. Good luck getting into it. Wasn't easy. But it was so unique and so different. And it was funny because every cute girl in Nashville is wearing short shorts with cowboy boots and has an iPhone and has a Starbucks cup. We're really in a copycat society. American Idol becomes X Factor, becomes America's Got Talent, becomes The Voice. I mean, that's what we do. In the NFL, somebody runs the Wildcat, everybody runs the Wildcat. I always say that about sports blogs. Sports blogs came out, and they were this new emerging media, and they were going to be edgy and unique. And now 10 years later, they're all the same. Put a hot girl on the front. ESPN's bad. Skip Bayless is horrible. Let's swear to seem edgy. It's the same thing. Colin Cowherd's bad. Skip Bayless worse. They're all the exact same thing virtually, and only one of them, thebiglead.com, has what I would call original content that makes me think. That's why that's the one I go to every day. If there's anything good on the other ones, he'll pick it up. That's the one I go to because they have original content. They make me think. And it's not ESPN bad. Let's swear to make us edgy. It's everything. Everybody ultimately just does the same stuff over and over. So when you go experience something that is totally unique, you're like, wow, that was amazing. That was, and we started last year. All the football shows at all the networks to me look the exact same. The people hosting them are capable. They're often very good. The analysts are very good. The production, the draft, everything looks the same, right? Last year we created this football show on Sundays that nobody watched. It was on at this ungodly hour for West Coast viewers, Colin's new football show, and it was goofy and it had cartoons and we talked gambling and it was just inappropriate. And what I loved about it, I said, I don't care if anybody watches. Let's just give the audience a new experience. Like something, we made our own commercials. They were awful. And we're like, who cares? We're not getting fired here. There's no pressure. The margins are good. We had cartoons. We didn't care. And it was like when somebody gives you something unique, you're so appreciative of, hey, whether it's the best or not, it's like, dude, I really appreciate you trying. I really appreciate the effort. So Catbird Seat was great, and it was unique. So congratulations to that place. We were talking about violence in society, and I sound like an old fuddy-duddy whenever I talk about it because I think there's too much violence everywhere. And I don't have any answers for Ray McDonald and domestic violence. I really don't. I don't have any answers. I don't. I don't have answers when I see the racial issues in Baltimore or Ferguson. I don't have any answers. I don't know. I don't have answers for the cop shootings. It's terribly sad. I don't pretend I have the answers. I think we should discuss it. I'm really proud of the fact that a lot of African Americans call my show and feel welcome, and we can discuss stuff. It makes me happy that anybody can call it. Women call our show. I wish we had more dialogue and we stopped worrying about, you don't have a right to talk about this subject, or pointing fingers, and I'm more right than you are on racial talk. I think we need to discuss all of it. I will say this, though. Violence is everywhere, and these major corporations fund it and fortify it. And I think it has a big, big impact on the violence among young kids. We are numb to it. You see this all the time. You'll see somebody in a subway, somebody in the street get knocked out cold, and nobody goes to help them up. Why would you? I just played it on the video game an hour earlier. And video game nerd, we're not blaming you totally, but it's part of the issue. Violence is everywhere. Bill, you're in the herd. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I saw Mad Max just a couple of days ago, and I was really surprised because that's a very, very violent movie, and there's a lot of kids in the show and everything like that, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention that that's something that, like the lines of what you said, and then I wanted to say that Mr. McDonald from the 49ers, okay, he is a thug. He hangs around with punks. He doesn't care about himself. And now the Bears have to let him go. There's too many of these guys playing professional football and other sports, and they need to wake up and realize that they're paying them millions of dollars, and you're representing the NFL or whatever, and you're supposed to be in line. That's what I think.
Well, Bill, I don't know if athletes are role models. I think they are incidentally. I think it's just the reality. We are a nation that watches a great deal of sports on television, and they are, whether they want to be or not, they tend to be role models. Ray McDonald is got real problems, and I don't know. I can't explain it. I'm not a psychotherapist. I don't see hitting women as the answer, but I don't have to deal with that. But I do think, and it regardless of race, I just think you watch television. I've said this before. Again, I sound like an old man. I will watch shows that my daughters watch, right? And it's like 5 PM, and basically every show is about getting the boy and making out. You know what I mean? Like that's every show. And I say that, and I sound like I'm 80. And every millennial's like, hey, Grandpa. But you'll be a parent someday, too. Jim, you're in the herd. Go ahead.
Hey, Colin. Love the show.
Thanks.
And I hate to bring up a anecdotal example, but it is uncomfortable, and people need to be uncomfortable before it's solved. And you hit a note with me. It hurts even to remember this scene that I did nothing. Now, when I backtalked my mom, my father hit me so hard across the face that it still hurts today. And I'm 60 years old. But I'll guarantee you I never backtalked my mom again. Don't like violence, but you know what? It was called for. I used to take a wrestler. I was an assistant coach in a Florida high school, and we had a beast that played football. We needed him. The kind of guy, when he takes his shirt off, the other wrestlers are scared that weigh in. And I used to drive him home, and this is going to be really politically incorrect, but I used to take him home to the projects. And I remember one day dropping him off, and out of an apartment in his building, they spilled out a man and a woman, and this guy was beating this woman senseless. And I said, Craig, we got to stop this. And he said, it's cool, man. Don't worry about it. And I start trying to get out of the car, and this is the kind of guy that when he squeezes your arms, you think your bones are going to break. And he grabbed me. And I said, we got to go out and stop that. She's getting beat silly. And he grabbed me and he stopped me and he looked me in the eye and said, I'm not getting shot over that. And he got out and I sat there and I left. And that's the kind of culture. And I don't think the Delta.
But I don't think that's a black culture, Jim. I don't think that's a black culture. I think that's happening all over society. I'm sorry, but you look at the numbers, I don't think it's a black issue. I think it's a Latino issue, a machismo issue. It is a young male issue. I don't see that at all as a black issue. I don't.
I agree with you there. Didn't mean to be racially insensitive. I think it's a demographic issue.
It's
and
young
this was
men.
before video.
Jim,
Yep.
but Jim, it's you're for I feel bad to anybody that has to watch that. I don't think domestic violence in itself is a race. I just think it's an issue among young men who tend to be more violent, period, and football attracts more violent people. But when I look at domestic violence, I mean, I'm not in the court system. I don't watch on a regular basis. I don't think it's just a racial thing at all. I think it is. I don't know what it is. To be honest with you, I don't have an answer. It's a problem among wealthy. It's a problem among poor. It's a problem among middle class. It is when you objectify women for decades in the major media streams, this is what happens. I think it is a humongous issue all through America based on images furnished and fortified by major corporations, allowed over the airwaves, and picked up by all people, wealthy or impoverished. I don't have the numbers to back. I've never looked up those domestic violence issues. I don't see it as race. I just don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it as more Samoan, more Latino, more white, more black. I think it's a societal plague.
Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio. This season, the Mets have been a tale of two teams. One of the league's best at home and one of the worst on the road.
Towards the corner. No!
This weekend, they'll be at home at Citi Field facing the Marlins. Will their home field domination continue, or will Giancarlo Stanton lead Miami to a road win? The Mets and Marlins. The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by the first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app.
So I'm filing through my college football magazines, and I read through about 4 of them. And let me just say this: these people are out of their mind. Alabama's the most This is Nick Saban's worst football team in like 5 years. They returned 2 offensive starters. They don't know who their quarterback is. Their secondary, despite Nick's brilliant secondary coaching, lost their best player, and I don't love it. And they have to replace their 3 best wide receivers. Well, their recruiting classes are great. So are LSU's. When you're bad at quarterback, you're not a special football team. Also, in their conference on their schedule, LSU, Auburn, Arkansas, A&M, and Tennessee will all be better. Phyllis, I am sorry, Alabama is not a top 5 team this year.
Cowherd, the dynasty isn't over.
Officially, not, but is this year.
The SEC isn't completely down. You're still in it, Bama.
And their schedule is, I read all the top schedules in the country this weekend. Alabama's schedule is the toughest schedule in the country. So say it out loud. No idea who our quarterback is. Lost all of our top 3 receivers. Only returned 2 or 3 offensive starters. Secondary, and scheduling, awful. In one point, they faced Georgia, Arkansas, A&M, Tennessee, LSU, at Mississippi State in order. 6 games, 3 on the road. Good luck. Oh, then they get a break. Then they have to go to Auburn. Their schedule is brutal.
Alabama is going to go all the way, and then I want you to get back on this radio station and apologize to every single Alabama fan in the nation.
I'm not going to have to when you're 8-4.
Shut your mouth up.
7-5, my bad.
I don't care.
6-6, want to go there?
That's what I don't understand.
Well, understanding me is not easy.
If you think you represent men, then God help us all.
Most underrated team is USC, obviously.
Let's just call a truce.
Well, USC returns a quarterback that had 39 touchdowns and 5 picks, and the entire offensive line, and great receivers and backs. And their schedule, the 3 best teams they play on it, Notre Dame, Oregon, and UCLA, all have new quarterbacks. They'll be favored in all but 2 games. So I think they're underrated. But
I got you, Holmes. I got you.
So I noticed that this weekend, the Indy 500 was on. And I have never watched the Indy 500 one time from beginning to end. And I don't necessarily feel guilty, but I was sitting there flying back from Nashville this weekend, and I thought to myself, don't let anybody pigeonhole you as not an American, because I wrote down 10 things I've never done or don't like that are considered to be really American man things, and I would like to give you my list, so don't feel guilty if you don't wave a flag around. Number 10, I've never watched an episode of Lost, and I'm not going to apologize. Number 9, I've never eaten at an Arby's. Number 8, I've never watched the Indy 500 beginning to end. Number 7, I've never driven a Chevy. Nothing against Chevy, just never driven one. Number 6, I've never really liked Thanksgiving. The house gets too hot. Number 5, I prefer watching the World Cup to almost all baseball games. Number 4, I support the Second Amendment but have never owned a gun. Number 3, I've never had an allegiance to one political party. Number 2, I don't prefer blondes. And number 1, I think Harleys are too loud. I'd rather drive a quiet sedan. That's my America. Don't feel guilty. One of those you were outraged by, Stanzik. Which one?
Thanksgiving.
The house
you hate America?
No, I think the house gets so hot.
You are one pathetic loser. What's not to like, man? Meat, beer, football?
It's a holiday for gluttony. I'm not into it.
Best meal of the year. Got everything.
The best meal of the year was this weekend in Nashville for me. That was not the best meal of the year. And all that tryptophan, it's like 2 p.m, and you're full and you're napping.
Like you don't like a good nap.
It's maybe the best meal coated in gravy of the year.
And you got some turkey soup for a week? Come on.
That's just not my... You know what I'll say? I've always told you this. 4th of July, underrated. Thanksgiving, kind of overrated. You're just single. It's the one really good homemade meal you get every year, Stanzik. That's why you like it. My wife and I last year, we went out for Thanksgiving. 2 years ago, we went to New York City and just walked around. And last year, we went to a restaurant. It was unbelievable. Didn't have to do any of the cooking, any of the cleanup. The restaurant was packed.
Was it an American restaurant?
Yeah, it was an American restaurant. I don't know.
P.F. Chang's doesn't count.
No. 4th of July, wildly underrated. Fireworks, explosions, outside, beach, beers, craft beer, fireworks, stuff blowing up. Not bad at all.
Colin Cowherd. The Thundering Herd Podcast.
You know, the story we were talking about this weekend, I had 2 of my very best NBA sources. They don't work at this network. People I've known for a long time. And I was talking about the Kevin Love situation because I didn't feel particularly great Saturday morning, woke up, and I kind of stayed in my room for about 3 hours, and the wife was out kind of hanging out and, doing what wives do and stuff on the road. And so I was just hanging out reading magazines, and I saw the Kevin Love stuff that he may leave. So I called sources. They called back that night. And my feeling from my sources on Kevin Love is Cleveland would love him to stay, but Kevin's a different guy. He wasn't beloved in Minnesota. He can be emotionally distant and aloof. There are people that feel he will not sacrifice defensively for the team. I will say this. If you leave LeBron James in this Cleveland team, then it's about your numbers. Because they're in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they are going to sweep it probably without Kyrie doing much and Kevin Love and Varejao out. They are going to dominate the East for the next 5 years if Kevin Love comes back. Now, again, he's going to have to go from 23 to 18 points, and he may not want to do that. But the NBA is about May and June. You want to score 23 and be the T-Wolves and never on TV? Or do you want to be on television in May and June? Tim Legler on earlier talked about Kevin Love being unhappy right now.
Kevin Love's role is dramatically different than it was in Minnesota. That can't be an easy thing if you view yourself as an elite player in this league. So that's been a difficult adjustment for him. At the end of the day, he is going to have more memorable shots as the third option in Cleveland than he will as the number 1 option in L.A. for the next 5 years.
I completely agree with that. I think the NBA is a different animal. Nobody watches the regular season. They watch May through June. There's about an 8-week period we are glued to the NBA, and the numbers prove it again this weekend. We're into it. We talk about it. That's when you want to be playing. And the Eastern Conference, LeBron basically, J.R. Smith, the Fighting Dellavedovas, Tristan Thompson are winning the East. You don't think Love, Varejao, and Kyrie at full strength? It will be a joke. Look at what this Cleveland team did post-All-Star break. They dominated not only the East but the West. You leave this team to a rebuilding team, and let's be honest, who wants Kevin Love? Miami, rebuilding. New York, rebuilding. Lakers, rebuilding. Portland, good. Don't think they're a title team with it. Heard brought to you by Johnsonville. We don't make sausage. We make family and sausage. I have no idea what that means. Please go buy it. Dan gets right up. You're in the herd, Dan. Go ahead.
Hey, Colin. I just thought that I'd ask you, hindsight 2020, looking back at this kind of Monday morning quarterback thing, would you have made the trade for Andrew Wiggins? And, seeing that Andrew Wiggins is more of a defensive player, too. He's got an offensive side that, can be developed. And
Dan, it's a good question. I saw both sides of it, but I would have made the move because I think LeBron for this year and the next 3 is in his physical prime, and he didn't want to wait for Wiggins to hit his prime in his 3rd year. So I believe LeBron thought Kyrie's in his prime physically, Love's in his prime physically, I'm in my prime physically, and that whereas Wiggins was really good. Next year he'll be a borderline all-star. The following year, his 3rd year, Dan, he will be an all-star. But LeBron will then be exiting his peak years. Remember, LeBron's got unbelievable playoff minutes on those legs. Only 3 players in NBA history have played 4,000 minutes in the playoffs in a 5-year span. Larry Bird and Dennis Johnson, and LeBron twice. So he is not going to give you this level in 4 years. Mike, you're in the herd, bud. You got 2 minutes. Fire away.
Colin, thanks for taking the call. I think it's somewhat comical due to injuries. LeBron went back to Cleveland to get this super team and win a championship, and he's back to square one where he was 5 years ago. It's kind of funny.
I don't agree. D-Wade couldn't stay healthy. Bosh has now had injuries. Battier, Ray Allen, they were an old team that couldn't defend. That Miami team, by the way, LeBron leaves, how good are they? Not very. He was holding them together with duct tape and super glue. Battier retired. Mike Miller can barely walk. Ray Allen's not playing. Your bigs were Joel Anthony and Haslam. That Miami team, he left at the right time. They were old. He was having to play 45 minutes and carry them on both ends. He couldn't get D-Wade and Bosh simultaneously to be healthy in a series. This Love injury is more random. Love will be ready to play next year.
Colin, can we just clarify something you said earlier? If Love comes back to Cleveland, how many wins will they have next year?
70.
You know how many teams in NBA history have won 70 games?
1.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and on ESPN News. The Thundering Herd Podcast.